Perfect. Thank you, Christy. Let's dive into this. All right. Good morning. Thank y'all all for being here today. I'm going to get things kicked off with kind of an overview. We've done this each of the past 4 years that we've done these virtual summits, and I thank y'all all for joining us today. We've got a great group that are going to talk about some of the changes and new things that we've done with EDDMapS over the last year and some of the future directions that we're going. So, tune in as much as you can today. And again, thanks for joining us for this fourth annual EDDMapS Summit. All right, so as was mentioned, EDDMapS is run out of the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. Our web address is bugwood.org, and I would encourage everyone to go there and check out all the different programs offered by the center. So for those of y'all that are new, what is EDDMapS? Well, EDDMapS, the name came from Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System. And that's really what we see EDDMapS is, as two different things. It's that reporting system to make it very easy to report an invasive species, and then having the ability for that data to come out in a lot of different formats. And so you take that and you add it to the existing library of identification and management information that exists as part of the center, and you have this great resource that can help solve problems. We wanted to make EDDMapS as easy as possible. This is all about helping facilitate local early detection and rapid response and local action, and being able to provide both of you at the landscape level and also at the local level. And then, as you're going to see through some of these presentations today, being able to document change over time and better tell our story of what we're doing related to invasive species. And I'm going to talk about this toward the end of this presentation, to be a platform to support additional applications. And as we were talking about this and how we work and how EDDMapS works and what our philosophy is, it really came down to something very simple. We try to work with our partners and figure out how they do their work. And when we figure out how they do their work, then how can we make these tools fit their needs? And so that's really our philosophy. It's not about you having to change the way you work and be able to use EDDMapS. It's about us making sure that EDDMapS fits in your workflow the way it should. And so the first question we always get asked about EDDMapS is, what kind of information is required? And we put this together a few years ago, and I really think it sums up what the core information is required when you're documenting an invasive species. What was it? Where was it? When did you see it? Who are you? How much was there? How did you document it, and why did you document it? And if you think about those simple things, that is really what all invasive species data kind of ties back to. And then having the framework of when a new report comes in, who does it go to? How are the right people notified? Who has jurisdiction over it? Is it something that's new to that county, to that state, to the US, to North America? And then being able to look at what was submitted, see if it was identified correctly by the person submitting it, and then determine what the next steps of how it should be handled. And then once the data is in the EDDMapS database, how can we make it as accessible, as easy to use, is interoperable with other systems, and being able to find it through the website and different applications. We've also really tried to focus the tools that we've developed on different user bases. And so we're going to see that a little bit today, in the differences between the EDDMapS app and the EDDMapS Pro app, as well as some of the resources that are on the website. So next year, we'll have a big party as EDDMapS turns 20 years old. The website was first launched in 2005. It was 2011 when the first reporting app, I've Got One, came out. That followed the next year with EDDMapS Missouri River Watershed Coalition, which later became EDDMapS West, and then all the regional apps followed from there. In 2018, we launched EDDMapS Pro. Last year, we retired most of those regional apps to kind of consolidate around the EDDMapS app. And then this year, as you'll see through my presentation and others, we're really trying to focus on better identifying and marketing the different tools that are available through EDDMapS, improving some of our training resources, and also the resources that are available to our partners. And as a quick comparison, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more about iNaturalist later, but just looking at some of the different systems, many of which we work very closely with, but they all have very varying different tools and resources available, and they cover different things. And I'm going to really get into this more when we talk about iNaturalist in a few minutes. So EDDMapS is a system. Part of that system is the website and some of the tools available there, as well as the EDDMapS app, which is the app that is really focused on trained professionals, so trained volunteers and professionals. So it's the app that makes it very easy to report species one at a time. It has good resources and pictures and information about those species, and allows you to do that offline and then upload it later. And this is really the core app that we send most people to that know a little bit about the problem and want to help. And then you move up to EDDMapS Pro, which you're going to hear more about today, and where you really have the power of collecting hundreds of reports in a day, of being able to go back and do revisits and update the record and better tell the story of what's going on in the area. And so you take all that and you take almost 20 years, and this is what the map looks like across US and Canada. And obviously some of the bigger counties are going to have more data in them, but pretty good coverage across the US and Canada in terms of data per county. And we have over 8 million records in EDDMapS now. About 6 million of those have actual latitude and longitude associated with them. That's from about 47,000 different reporters and data sources. A lot of plant species are included in that data set, but also, about 700 wildlife, about 700 insect species also represented in that. And amazingly, just looking at the time aspect that's incorporated with a lot of the records, we've logged and documented over 21,000 hours of collecting invasive species occurrences since this launched. I really like this graph because it really helps, in my mind, show the growth over time in terms of each year, how many people have been active in the system. And that is both reporting, verifying, downloading data, logging in to view some of the advanced features. And it's great to see that increase over time. So a quick look at some of the numbers for this past year. We had right over 200,000 new records come in. We averaged about 550 a day coming in from all the different various sources. About 5,500 reporters, and that was about a 15% increase from the previous year. A little bit down on revisits, but I think that's just, as people are actually that are using revisits or having successes and moving on and not needing to document that as much. Here's the data by county in 2023. I love to see this uptick down here in Arizona, where they've really started using EDDMapS, and that was previously a pretty big hole in the map. And so working on New Mexico, and hopefully next year we'll have some better data in there as well. So the kind of data coming in, about half and half positive and negative data, which is really good, because that negative data can be very useful. Also, about 13% of the data coming in is treated, and then a little bit less is eradicated. Still getting a lot of data coming in from the web, about 60% of the data coming from the web, and then about 20% coming from one of the different applications, smartphone applications. Again, about 70% of the data overall in the system is plants and then insects and wildlife and diseases from there. We had a big data set come in from some wildlife refuges in Idaho, and so we had a big uptick of Idaho data this year. But it's interesting as I go through and as you see with some of the sponsors for today and some of the states and provinces that are really embracing EDDMapS, using it as their database of record in their state. Those tend to be the states and that have active outreach campaigns. Those tend to be the states where we get the most reports annually. And then overall, looking at that, very similar, there's some IPM projects in New Jersey that helps bump that data up. And then as we're sharing data with Cal Flora, then there's also a lot of data there that's coming in. Of all the records in EDDMapS, I'm happy to say that 98% of them have been verified. That means somebody's reviewed them and moved those to the next level in the system. We've still got a group of data from Michigan that we're working to try to find partners to help get that data verified. And then some of these other areas, some of it's just a backlog where people haven't caught up. The verification system is impressive. We have 980 verifiers throughout the US and Canada that have signed up different levels of expertise to be the people that review this information. And that is controlled at the state level. And so it's not just anybody reviewing the data, it's somebody who has that expertise in the area. And you can look that up and see who the verifiers are by just choosing a species and dropping a point on the map, and it will show you who gets notified and who the verifiers are for that area and that species. Not only do we have this network available, what is great is we're seeing traffic to the website. And this goes through about a period up to September, but we've had almost 9 million page views, and that's from almost 2 million different users. So by the data going in here, we're reaching a much larger audience than just who is downloading and reporting. We also, as we were putting this together over the last few weeks, realized that we've had a nice up in mobile use from 2022 to 2023. And so as we continue to improve the website, that's something we're going to look at even more, is how we can better improve the website on mobile so you can do everything you need to do through the mobile website. I mentioned iNaturalist. iNaturalist, as everybody probably knows, has hundreds of millions of records now in their system. We have worked with them to come up with a way to pull that data on invasive species and important pests into EDDMapS. And so we have built what we call a triage system where the verifiers can go in and choose what data for their area to pull in, and then they get email updates on what has come in when we run the pull from iNaturalist every few weeks. And so with that, we've moved about 500, almost 600,000 records from iNaturalist into EDDMapS. We've also had about 360,000 that have been ignored for whatever reason. Their species of not really concern in those areas. What I really find interesting is overall looking at that data, only about 3,000 of the 5,000 species we track in EDDMapS are covered by iNaturalist data. So there's a lot of species of interest to y'all as our user group that are not part of iNaturalist at all. And so it's not a good source of additional data from there. And because iNaturalist was built for documenting biodiversity, not documenting invasive species, then there's some pieces in iNaturalist that can cause issues with the data, whether it's something being research grade and not being a wild population, which we've seen some cases of, or where the privacy is listed as obscured. And so you're not getting the exact location of the species. And if you're talking about a plant species that you want to go treat, then that becomes very difficult for you as the user or as a reviewer. And just an example of filling in the blanks and how EDDMapS has done that over time. This is what we knew about the distribution of kudzu in 2005 when EDDMapS was launched. And so spotty distribution across the Southeast, pretty limited in the Northeast. And this is what we know about the distribution of kudzu now. And so it's just taking the time to make the documentation so we can better say, hey, this is the vine that ate the South. And then when you are saying that about a species that has very spotty distribution, that is not what we as the community know, but it just was not able to be documented prior to having tools like EDDMapS available. All right, so some recent updates to EDDMapS. We have completely reworked the tools page. If you go there, it's no longer that boring list of a whole bunch of tools, but now it's really focused on the different features, the different tools within EDDMapS. And maybe that's the advanced query tool that we've talked about for years. And now we've rebranded that EDDMapS query just to have a simple name to go along with that and really help have that thing you remember. Okay, I'm going to go to EDDMapS query and I'm going to pull the information I need. And then we're working on building EDDMapS Studio, which will allow you to create interactive maps based on your needs. And now we've just got some example maps up there. And Rebecca's in her presentation is going to go through this more in more detail. We've also made some minor updates throughout the site. We've changed the alert icons just to better represent what they are, cleaned up some of the other pages. The advanced query tool, that this has been out for a couple of months now, completely redesigned, trying to make it more interactive. And so you don't end up putting in parameters and then coming back with no data. So the map updates in real time as you're changing the parameters, as you're putting in what you're looking for. Something that's been asked for and needed for a while is a standalone page for the EDDMapS app. So we can have something you can put a QR code on and send people to this page, and then they can have the links to both the EDDMapS app and EDDMapS Pro, you know, in the Apple Store or in the Google Store. So a standalone EDDMapS app page, something been needing for a while, and now that's available. We've recently, working with our partners in USGS, added a link to the inhabit models. And so when you're looking at a species like Canada thistle, you can click on the inhabit button and it's going to open in a new window and take you directly to the modeling results in the inhabit database. And this all comes as part of what we're calling EDDMapS Predictor, and having the different modeling tools that are available through EDDMapS and being able to click on that and see the species that have been modeled by that and then go directly to those maps. So if you're looking for what species have been modeled, you had to go to each individual species before. Now you can go directly to the predictor page, see the different models, and then go there. We're working on a pretty major update to EDDMapS Pro. Because of when it was developed before Apple changed and updated their programming language. And so in order to make EDDMapS Pro more efficient, easier to update in the future, and take advantage of some of the newer libraries that Apple has to offer, EDDMapS Pro is being rewritten in the Swift programming language, and that's going to go into beta testing soon. It's going to work just like you're going to hear about this afternoon, but it's just in the back end is going to have been updated. And then we're going to add some new features to it as well once it's there. The EDDMapS app and the Wild Spotter app were written in the new language, and this one just predated that. And so it hasn't been completely updated yet. Last year, I think we launched the concept of projects within EDDMapS, and we've had about 50 of those set up since we launched that, with different users and records in those different projects. You're going to hear more about dashboards this afternoon. I threw this in here because it's just exciting to see what our partners have been able to do to pull data into another system and really tell a story in a full dashboard about it. We continue doing education and outreach. You know, our group is cooperative extension, our group is outreach focused. And so we do a lot of training like the summit today and in other resources to make these tools as easy for you to use as possible. Going back to 2022, and we were doing monthly office hours, and we took a topic, and then from 11 until 12-ish on the third Friday, we jumped into that and had more information about it. And we had good attendance for that, as well as good post YouTube viewing. We decided to change that format a little bit. And so we've started doing bi-weekly Bugwood office hours to cover more of our projects than just EDDMapS and really be user focused. And so the hope is for you to be able to submit questions beforehand that we can answer in that time frame, or that you just jump on and we're able to work with you almost one-on-one to really solve any issues that you're having. And so those are from 1 to 3 Eastern on Fridays. And there's the website if you want to sign up and get registered for those, as well as submit any questions. We've got a whole presentation about this later, but really trying to help our partners with how to use the EDDMapS brand, how the proper usage of logos, and then making the colors and logos relatively easily accessible. Some things coming soon. The training materials page, which again is a lot of information on one page, that is moving into a knowledge base where you will be able to search for what you're looking for and be able to go in and pull those resources. Everything that's currently there will exist in this knowledge base, but it will be searchable, and you'll be able to submit a ticket if you have an issue with something that we can follow up on. Another thing that's coming very soon is Connect. That is Bugwood's single sign-on service. So you're going to have one place, whether you're downloading images from one of our image databases, or if you were logging on to EDDMapS, where you can see all that information, all your login information, all your profile information, all the things you've submitted to our different projects, manage your alerts, manage your emails that have been sent to you, all from one interface. And once you sign into one, it's going to keep you signed in to each of the different systems. We're also going to be reworking our species information pages to make those a little more accessible and to really highlight some of the pictures and the other resources that are available as part of that. Now, what we always get, and I'm going to give you some examples before I wrap up this presentation, is, you're going to get excited, hopefully, about everything you're going to see today, and you're going to go, okay, I want a dashboard tomorrow. And what you have to remember is there's steps to get from here to there. And you can't go from an empty spreadsheet with no data for your state, for your county, for your area, to a dashboard overnight. And so everybody wants the cool dashboard. Everybody wants to be able to see everything going on in the area they manage all at once. And that is all very possible, but you have to start by collecting the data, verifying the data, getting it in the database, and then you can build these cool tools on top of it. And remember that whatever bad data goes in is going to cause bad data to go out. And so making sure that things are correct, making sure you spot check data from you or your crews that's going in, just to make sure that you are getting good, consistent data. And then the next part is, well, okay, I'm starting to submit that data. What's the process look like? So the data comes in from all these different areas. It goes to the verifiers based on whether it's a regulatory or a non-regulatory species. The verifier can follow up, they can reject it, they can approve it. And then once it is approved, then it goes in, becomes publicly available if it can be. That's what populates the maps. That's what populates the dashboards. That's what populates the data feeds. That's what's shared with partners. That's what you can query through the EDDMapS query. That's what makes all this work. So There's a process, based on the species and who it goes to. And then once it goes through that process, then it becomes available and usable in the different ways. So I wanted to give a few quick case studies. I think this is mostly an invasive species crowd. You're like, why are we talking about corn? I just want to give you an example with this. Corn group came to us about some of their pests. We looked at their process in terms of when they did things. They needed a collection tool. They needed a data warehouse. They needed policies on sharing the data. And so we worked with them across each of the steps, from planning to setup to evaluation to things that need to go to the lab to things that need treatment, as well as to harvest information. And so with that, some tools have come out. One was looking at what's coming my way throughout the season. So as you can see, this was at a county level, just when southern corn rust showed up, and then allowed for you to kind of monitor that over time, so you would know when it would come and getting close to you. Another example where Arkansas and New Jersey were both working with the same pest, but had different needs in terms of what their treatments would be based on different thresholds. We've also seen a species like corn earworm, where had 7,000 records, kind of spotty coming in 2023. Since 2024, about 98,000 records. But if you go back even farther, predating when this data was in EDDMapS, there was about 300,000 records and a much larger footprint. But if you see this, these colors are years since the last data came in, and you can see there's a lot of that light blue color on the map. And so if you see that, then it goes, okay, how do we keep users engaged? How do we keep them coming back? And we figured out, well, part of it is to make it very easy for some of these very busy people to report things. And so maybe that's something like this expert map, where they can just go in and color the counties that it's been found in, having the very easy to use web-based maps, being able to do site-based reporting with traps into a form, or doing that on a smartphone. And then as the manager of the project, staying on top of that incoming data and making sure that it flows as it needs to, and that you keep track of what's going on. And then having some value added tools, some forecasting, some other tools that make it more useful to both the people submitting the data and to the project as a whole. And then continue to engage with your stakeholders, as often as you possibly can. Let's review what worked, what didn't work last year, and how we can move things better as we move forward. And then make it fun. And this is something we're working on right now, is incorporating badges into EDDMapS across the apps and across your profile pages. And so you'll get different badges based on different achievements. And we've seen that work. We ran a campaign with Juro Watch, the large Juro spiders that have showed up in Georgia. And over a 2-year process, by just having an online contest, we were able, what really impresses me is over 1,000 unique reporters, and a good majority of them have only reported Juro spiders. So these are new people that we've brought in and introduced to this mapping and invasive species world, just because of this showy spider that showed up. And then, last year, very good results. Again, more people reported during the spotting contest. And again, we had 600 reporters, mostly who had only reported Juro spiders. And the only thing we were offering was digital badges. And then for the winners, we mailed them physical stickers out. So very low overhead in order to make it where it was something that worked. Some other projects, last year we heard about Squirrel on Pigs and that campaign. And then this year, we've now launched the website as well as the app to go along with that. Very focused, all the data is going into EDDMapS, but really focusing on a niche within the invasive species world. And then finally, something I'm really excited about, the Wild Spotter Citizen Science Program. WildSpotter is not just an app, it's a detection campaign that we can use to help protect and manage our public lands. You know, we can't get people to report invasive species that they don't understand and care about the problem. And that's where WildSpotter, which we sometimes, you know, will refer to as EDDMapS Lite, is there to fill that lower niche in terms of the EDDMapS, getting it out there. We held our first ambassador training course in December, and it was great. We had a great group of speakers and a great group of attendees. And at the end, we were able to graduate 59 new WildSpotter ambassadors who can go forth and help spread the word. And they were trained in how to do the social part of invasive species and natural resource management. So we're going to continue this and do it again in February of 2025 in Alabama. And we're going to have more information soon on the invasivesfree.org website. So to wrap up, we've got a great agenda. Rebecca is going to do a couple of presentations, both on the different ways to report and then how to use EDDMapS on the desktop. And Tristan is going to show you a walkthrough of the EDDMapS app. Jerry and Kevin are going to do the same thing with EDDMapS Pro. And then Debbie and Melissa are going to really dive into the EDDMapS brand and show how partners can better use that. And then Aaron's going to wrap us up with showing us the dashboards and some of the cool things that Utah have done by having this good data over time. I want to thank the folks that the different organizations who over time have funded different parts of EDDMapS and made everything we're doing here possible. Almost at 20 years, we've shown it to be effective for all taxa, and I really think there's some new cool things that you're going to find out more about today that will really get you excited and make the tool even more useful. So thank y'all very much. I'll answer some of the questions in the chat so we can keep this moving, and look forward to a great day. And thank you all again for being here.
Thank you so much, Chuck. That was a fantastic overview, and I'm really excited to hear all the additional presentations today. I am Tegan Wilmot. I'm the Education and Prevention Manager with NASMA, and I'll be helping to moderate today's sessions. Right now, I'd like to welcome Rebecca Wallace. You can pull up your slides and begin your presentation. Thank you.